Good morning, everyone. The City of Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency meeting is called to order. I believe that Board Member Maniscalco, you have the invocation this morning.
Thank you very much. It's my honor this morning to welcome our friend Sandy Sanchez. Sandy Sanchez serves on the board of the West Tampa CAC. She's the neighborhood liaison for Armory Gardens, home of the Villa Brothers Park, and secretary of the Tampa Homeowners Association of Neighborhoods, also known as THAN. If you could please stand, Sandy will give the invocation. Thank you for being here.
Wish all of you success, all of those of you who have helped and kept your word from the last election and helping the neighborhoods. We wish you luck on that. Now, if you would bow your heads, please. We ask for God's guidance when we consider the obstacles that are placed before us. Help us to be objective when we consider the possibilities and find the remedies to solve our problems. Help us make those decisions with honesty, integrity, and humility. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, in liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Roll call. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Carlson?
Here.
Vieira? Here. Maniscalco?
Here.
Citro?
Here.
Goods?
Here.
Miranda?
Here.
Hurtak?
Here.
We have physical quorum.
Thank you so much. Today, Mr. Massey.
Sorry, let me turn my microphone on. This is a regular meeting of the City of Tampa Community Development Agency, or the CRA, held at 9 a.m. on February 9th, 2023 in City Council Chambers located in Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa, Florida. The public is able to participate in this meeting during public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker, either here in person at Old City Hall or virtually by way of Communication Media Technology, or CMT. However, the use of CMT does require pre-registration with the City Clerk's office. Directions for pre-registration are included in the notice of the meeting and on the agenda. Can I please have a motion waiving the CRA standard rules to allow public comment and participation by CMT?
I have a motion by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, Ms. Nicole Travis will come and talk to us about the changes to the agenda today.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. We received the memo in stating that there is an event that you all need to get out for, so you're going to break at 11:30. And trying to meet that deadline, we're recommending continuing certain items to the March meeting, things that are not time sensitive. And so if we want to go through the agenda, I'll make some recommendations to help you achieve your goal in getting out a little earlier today.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we do that, what is this adoption of the last minute meetings? I'm seeing that kind of every meeting now. Are we always adopting meetings each time? What's going on with that?
I just spoke to the clerk's office. There should be a standard provision on here about adopting the minutes for the prior meeting. It did not make it on this agenda. We will put it on the next agenda, and we'll approve the minutes for the prior two meetings at the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
So,
All right. Go ahead. Yeah, okay. So I'm suggesting that you take the action items or the required approvals first on the agenda this meeting, and then starting with item number 1, continuing the presentation from Channelside CAC Chair Kimberly Curtis to the March 9th CRA board meeting.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The next item would be agenda item number 5, to continue the East Tampa Summer Youth Program until March
Second.
9th.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 6, we are working diligently on that and should have that buttoned up for you at the March 9th meeting. This is for the Tampa Theater, what their ask is, and we just received that information. So March 9th is my recommendation.
Board Member Carlson?
Yeah, I spoke to Ms. Travis about this offline. and to Tampa Theater. I would just ask that we have an agreement that we can approve at the next meeting, and if anybody wants to see a draft of it or have a conversation with them about it, please do that so we can move that forward. Clock's ticking for them and for us. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay, so I believe I had a motion by
So moved.
Board Member Good, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. I'm asking that you continue the CRA staff reports to the April 13th. That would put it back on your bi-monthly reporting structure, please.
Second.
We have motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. And lastly, Madam Chair, number 11, that item needs to be removed from this agenda. It will be on your council agenda for the 16th,
Okay.
next week.
Motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
That's it for the adjustments to the agenda.
Okay, so do we need to make a motion to move the approvals first?
Public comment, we'll start with the approval.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you so very much.
My pleasure, thank you.
At this time, it is, or I'm sorry, we need to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, so, motion made by Board Member Good, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. It is now time for public comment. The public is welcome to comment on any item for up to 3 minutes. Welcome. Do we have anyone that would like to speak this morning? Come on up.
Good morning, Connie Burton. I'm here this morning as a member of the NAACP. Our ongoing issues around how do we deal with the systemic issues that has been identified in terms of the unavailable attainability of housing for poor and working class people. I don't know if it would be reported today, but in the last CRA, East Tampa CRA meeting, it was approved that we would extend housing assistance for homes up to $500,000. So we are talking about a community that is completely working class, is welcoming to all that want to come to East Tampa. But when we are talking about the slow pace of rehab, redevelopment for that community, I would say that this council should give caution to developers that it's building at that rate. And if people want to purchase at that rate, fine with the community. But the East Tampa CRA money should not be utilized in any form of assistance until we deal with the ongoing issues of systemic wealth divisions between the community, those that don't have, and those that are able to come in and purchase. That should be a problem and something that is very alarming to you. Also, in 2018, we had discussed up under different council members the possibility of doing container homes. It sours some, but we have to come up with creative ideas that would allow people in East Tampa and not be pushed further out of our community. Now we are finding more and more people that once lived in East Tampa, because we don't have duplexes, we don't have quadplexes, we don't have any of those things that can keep our communities whole. And so while it is driven by the administration, we question how ways of redlining has been transferred now in terms of those who have resources and those that do not have resources. And then what can this council do to ensure that our community is aware of programs that will provide opportunities for all? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Miss-
Board Member Goods.
Miss Travis, you gonna give a report about the CAC and that dollar amount that was approved today? And also, you know, we talked about, and I have an issue citywide, and I don't know if this council will have to, this board will need to make a motion to send to our city council. But again, I hear time and time again, even at community meetings and at debates we're going about communication within the city. I know we try to do the best we can, but I think that the county does an excellent job because the county puts those, like I keep saying, those billboards out there on the side of the road that people can see and know about programming. And if we need to change an ordinance, because I don't understand how the county can come in here and they can put those big old signs to communicate about their programs, zoning, and things like that, but yet we still don't do that. So I probably will make a motion. That's okay. I'll just do it at the night council meeting because we need to start. If there's a zoning change to be changed, we need to change it because that's what the public, where everyone's hearing that when we go to all these meetings right now, they're saying that the city's communication is very bad as we relate to programming and our programs. So I want to make sure we move forward. If this council is here or another council, that we have the right things for the community to know.
Good morning, CRA Board, Deputy Administrator Elise Strumgo. Also your interim Deputy Director for the CRA. And so I'll speak to a couple of things, just the comments that were just made. That was actually not driven by the administration, it was driven by the CAC itself. There is a housing subcommittee that, they took that up amongst themselves and they brought that forward to the CAC to increase that, that amount up to $500,000. But there was a lot of discussion as well relative to increasing the down payment assistance itself. And they opted not to increase that amount because there are funds that are that can be layered with other sources to achieve, to get people into their homes. So I'll leave that there for you to digest. But relative to the marketing, you'll receive an update this morning on branding and marketing. And then, I think that you'll be pleased with our progress to date and then also how we intend to attack the marketing of our programs as a CRA.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mentesnot, want to say Huru. Huru means freedom in Swahili. And we say we as African people should always be thinking about our freedom and the things that they do to keep us away from freedom and self-determination, because it's been 623 years since we've been living under these oppressive conditions. The conditions are really oppressive. And what they've been doing for 623 years is evolving the methodology, evolving the techniques of how they carry out the same and basic systems of oppression and regression and keep attacking African people. And they keep us confused. They keep us like crash test dummies, like we really don't have any sense. We have to go along with it. We see like people come down here, African people, most African people are scared to come down here. Just like most African people are scared of the police. Most African people are scared of white people. Most grown adult African people are scared of little white children. I'm saying literally scared, afraid, because they're afraid if we say the wrong thing to them, if we bump up against them wrong or something, anything can happen, that we can get literally lynched. Yes, literally lynched, literally incarcerated, literally charges brought against us and all this other craziness. And so that's why you don't see an influx of African people down here, although the city, most African people are living like in a third world country. You can go through the African community and see it. We're living in abject poverty. And all the information is there. And we can't make it just incumbent upon, say, our elected official or who y'all appoint for that district or certain organizations. No, you white people have to be responsible. We're 26% of this population, and we want to be treated as 26% of this population. We want 26% of this budget. We want 26. We don't want this affirmative action nonsense where we're getting, when you're caught in the nonsense, when they're doing a $139 million project and it don't go through anybody, and then you're caught in the midst of it, then you give a contract here and a contract there. No, if it's a $100 million contract, we want $26 million of it. And once again, I want to reiterate, what we do with it is what we do with it. If we spend bear or weave or whatsoever we do with it. but we're deserving of 26% of the budget. And that's what we have to hold this white city council accountable for. Can't keep getting off the hook. At one time, black people couldn't even come down here and speak unless they talking about nonsense. And it's still the same way. Speed bumps, roundabouts, what parks and recreations, parades, all that nonsense. And this community that we're living in is full of AIDS, full of diseases, full of diabetes, full of illnesses, and nobody here talks about it. Not in a real sense. White people, y'all have to step y'all game up.
Thank you.
And Bob Whitmore, the Executive Director of City Tree Citizens Action Group. A few weeks ago, a white man purchased over 6,000 black men and women for $30,000. Emancipated slaves, souls who lived through Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and segregation, were simply sold to the highest bidder. And where is the outrage? 40 acres, 4 city blocks of the remains of black Americans are now the property of a land speculator who was allowed to purchase their plots when the money-saving scheme of a city bureaucrat went awry. When this city tried to pull a fast one and get this property on the cheap, instead of simply outright purchasing it and honoring the dead with a historic designation. The Memorial Park Cemetery purchase has to be one of the most despicable acts of unbridled greed this city will ever see, God willing, and will, long after the Jackson House is allowed to collapse under the weight of neglect and white indifference, stand as an example of this great city's racist, build it and buy it for rich white people policies. A city that consistently shows over and over again that it believes being black is a criminal offense and spends billions on projects for the wealthy of this city while spending a fraction of that on social programs, green spaces, and housing options for men and women of color who struggle to simply get through their day without a cop asking them where they are going. Nothing you do here today, nothing, will be as important as making the Memorial Park Cemetery problem right. We need to pay the ransom demand the city has no doubt received and move forward, leaving Mr. Ortega to deal with his conscience and eventually his maker for these atrocities. I visited the souls of Memorial Park Cemetery this morning, and I will leave you with this. I sat beside the silent crowd of bodies set beneath the earth. Once free, they were enslaved again. For profit, 30 grand they're worth. Please free the souls of Memorial Park Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't say anything yet. Okay, it's not a good day for the mayor today, I can say that. Good morning, I'm Adrienne Rodriguez. Good morning, council. I'd like to illuminate some recently acquired information about Memorial Park Cemetery. Yesterday, myself and a vested party who will also be speaking today spoke with the new ownership of Memorial Park Cemetery about their newly acquired historical black cemetery. They were very accommodating, easy to talk to, provided details to help make sense of this, and are very much interested in selling back the cemetery to the city of Tampa. They explained the cemetery did go to a blind bid auction via the courts as a judicial sale. The sale occurred on January 6, 2023. There is a lengthy timeline, but in short, it started December of 2020, and finally the cemetery sold to the highest bidder on January 6, 2023. So 2 years, this sale has been in the works. City never had any intentions in doing the right thing, as Mayor Castro said she would. We all know that she only caters to what's important to her, and with her own unholy obsession with fireworks, ribbon cutting, and parades. Let's not forget parades. So she never did the right thing. She let the people of the community down. She let every single body in that cemetery, marked and unmarked, she let them down. She quoted Martin Luther King himself a couple of days before MLK Day while standing in Memorial Park Cemetery. The time is right to do what is right. The time is right to do what is right. I'd also like to mention that after a bid is won, there's something called a redemption period in which one has 10 days to reclaim the property. Now, the truth is the city of Tampa could not have made that reclaim, but you know who could have? The nonprofit they said Memorial Park was supposed to go to. I'd like to add that there are guidelines and requirements before the sale of a cemetery, but a foreclosure doesn't require any disclosures. So I stand behind my statements and accusations that the city of Tampa acted carelessly, recklessly, and irresponsibly, and there needs to be reparations. In my opinion, if I were able to say how much she should pay, I would say $200,000. $200,000 is a number she can easily remember. So when is this going to stop? This is the third cemetery I've fought for since 2018. Marti Colon in 2018, Woodlawn, which thank you last year, you guys saved it for us, and now we're doing this. They are willing to meet with Councilman Goods. They don't want to meet with the mayor. The owner is willing to meet with Councilman Goods because that is his district. And we can provide the city attorney or the council attorney a phone number of his representative so you can arrange that meeting. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
At Memorial Park, I've documented close to 15,000 burials, 10,000 of which are unmarked. The total number of burials there is likely close to 20,000, with 15,000 of them being...
Excuse me, could you please give your name for the record?
Oh, my name is Hallie Reed. The total number in there is likely close to 20,000, with 15,000 of them being unmarked. This includes a number of burials that were moved from Zion Cemetery, College Park Cemetery, and Robles Pond Cemetery before they were erased. These people are not unimportant. They include civic leaders such as Cyrus T. Green and George W. Middleton, and popular figures such as the professional baseball player Humberto Arenas, whose Cuban nationality allowed him to play minor league baseball, and the recording artist Zulema Casso, who recorded with Aretha Franklin, as well as the business owners and professionals that became the backbone of Tampa's middle-class Black community. The oldest person buried at Memorial died in 1919 with his age given as 106, meaning his birth year would have been in 1813. Many of the early burials at Memorial were old enough to not only have been born into slavery, but to have spent a significant portion of their adult lives as slaves. Memorial Park was dedicated in 1920 to be a dignified final resting place for Tampa's Black veterans. And today it is home to the only memorial in Tampa dedicated specifically to Black veterans. Today there are 830 veterans buried there, serving from the colored regiments of the Civil War to those who died serving their country in Vietnam. More than anything, the people buried at Memorial are the unacknowledged workers who literally built Tampa. They were cigar makers, farmers, dock workers, and laborers, the laundresses and housekeepers who served the people whose names went down in history. I am asking you today to not let them be forgotten. Save Memorial Park Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Eileen Henderson, 914 West Fribley Street, Tampa. I want you to know I was prepared to speak today and share some information with all of you based on a conversation I had yesterday with my cohort with the new ownership of Memorial Park Cemetery. And basically what I was going to outline was the timeline of events up to the day the city of Tampa lost its 100-year-old designated historical Black cemetery. But truth is, I can't seem to find the light. I am disillusioned and lost. What I now know is for 2 years, the city of Tampa has been back and forth with the courts, preparing for the foreclosure, then retracting, then preparing, then retracting, until finally, For a second time, they made the required public notice of sale and paid the service fee for the judicial sale of that cemetery. Again, all of this within a 2-year time span, all the while making public statements about how they were making strides with our cemeteries, specifically our black cemeteries. Heck, they even created a task force that was supposed to help secure a nonprofit to take over Memorial Park Cemetery, not a property flipper. I am bewildered, and the multitude of emotions is overwhelming. But mostly, I am in pain. My heart hurts deeply for the black community. My brothers and sisters, if they would so graciously allow me that privilege to call them my brothers and sisters. Standing here now, I struggle to find the words and strength to somehow persuade you for a call to action. I have been told I'm entirely too emotional, that in politics, it is the facts that must decide. And oh, how I beg to differ. Because you see, counsel, I would venture to guess that every single one of you became involved politically because of a passion and a dedication to do the right thing. Letting Memorial Park Cemetery go to the highest bidder was not the right thing. There were ample opportunities to make things right, and once again, Tampa has fallen to another new low. In the words of Nelson Mandela, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Council, you have the ability to rise up and help pick this city up from its fallen state of grace.
Thank you. Board Member Goods.
I'm gonna wait till after Ms. Copeland speaks, so we don't talk to the public, then I'm gonna address Ms. Travis.
Thank you, Noreen Copeland Miller. And I'm here this morning I was gonna ask for an update. And I just want to say to my brothers and sisters, thank you for the update. I've gotten an update from them, what was going on with Memorial Park Cemetery. I was at peace for a while because I was holding on. My grandfather's in that cemetery, a World War II veteran. My brother's in there, a veteran. And I have about 12 members in there, but what's most of all is my mother is there. And I was really at peace knowing 35 years ago that we buried her in that cemetery with a headstone and all of that. That day my body was empty. The feeling I felt that day was the most emptiest feeling I ever felt in my life. But to have to revisit this, I cannot even say how disgusting it is that the city of Tampa have allowed this to happen. I don't blame one person, I blame the city of Tampa. From the leadership on down. This should have never happened. It would have never happened in any other community. Not only that, we always saying CRA in East Tampa this, and East Tampa people don't know what they want. Yes, we do. We just are not allowed to say it, or we say it, we're painted a different way when we come down here, that we're angry and all that. We're mistreated. And it didn't just start happening. I was born here, raised in South Tampa, live in East Tampa by choice. Thank God I have my own home to live in that I keep up, but the audacity that this city had the audacity to let someone bid on a historical black cemetery, on any cemetery, is disgraceful. My heart, I'm hurting this morning. Emotionally, since last week, my body has been just going through some things because I'm right now continue every day and night I'm thinking about my mother. Although you all are working on it and you got it taken care of, we know how that works in East Tampa. 2 years from today, we'll still be working on it. I am right now saying to you, this is time sensitive with the cemetery. Do what's right. And Vieira, Councilman, you said you were working on it for a long time, and I can tell because when we talk about it, you leave the room. So you have way more knowledge than we do. But it's good that you talked about it, but you never talked to the community about it. You all let it go to foreclosure. In 2015, when Mr. Robinson tried to give the cemetery to the city of Tampa, when Ed Johnson was the manager of the CRA, the city didn't want it. We're not in the cemetery business, but you're able to put liens on it, go to foreclosure, and let a bidder come in and flip a cemetery. My mother's soul is not at rest. My grandfather, my grandmothers, my 12 family members, probably more than that in that cemetery, they are not resting now. So that means I'm not resting. And that means I come down here every Thursday, I will, because I'm going to advocate for this cemetery. And I thank God for my brothers and
30 more
sisters
seconds.
for coming down, feeling the passion. But I have people buried, and I am appealing to you all to do the right thing. I thank my councilman for what he's doing, but we need all of you to do something. From the top to the bottom, from the mayor, make this right, make it right now. This is time sensitive. We cannot allow it to draw out for another 2 or 3 years talking, because we're working on it. Not acceptable.
Thank you. Board Member Goods.
Let me say this. I did do a lot of public appearances about the cemetery. I talked to a lot of people. Death and grievance comes in many different ways to different people. Everyone grieves differently. Ms. Copeland did call me. Matter of fact, we had a conversation on, it was last Saturday night. She broke down. I felt so bad I didn't know what to do, and she said, "Council, I got to go before I could turn to another person." So I knew what that meant. Being a black man, I knew what that meant. So I texted her back and apologized and let her know that my heart was there, and she knows I'm gonna do my best to do the right thing. And the communities know that. Now, if you know, and the citizens, you know, we've been going these debates, and the citizens have been saying the same thing. There's a lack of communication with administration and council. You've heard that time and time again. You heard it just yesterday. My colleagues were there. And there is a breakdown. We don't know what's going on until it happens, and then it's, oh, people come to us to try to fix things when we don't know. But I would say to you, I've had a conversation. I would tell the public, I've had a conversation with Ms. Travis. And she's pretty much begged me, counsel, let's not talk that I'm going to fix it. That's what she told me. So that's why I haven't yelled the bullhorn and done a lot of things, because she told me behind the scenes she's going to fix it. Every time she's told me she's going to do something, she's done it. So I'm hoping that her, and whoever is the legal person working on the cemetery issue, resolve it. I won't. For our constitution, I can't meet with that owner for any type of negotiation, anything like that. I can't do that. But I promise once they get done or in that process, I will meet with the owner. But I can't do it right now because they're doing what they need to do to get this resolved. And I'm just going to tell them now, by whatever means necessary, I want it resolved. And I think Ms. Travis is going to get it resolved, and I think Mr. Massey's involved with that a little bit too. And I can assure the public, I haven't really heard the bullhorn, but the administration knows they don't want to hear the bullhorn. So I think they're going to go ahead and do what they need to do. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't want to get into any type of negotiating situation, and let them handle and do her business. Thank you.
Board Member Maniscalco.
So I was going to suggest if the owner wants to meet with Councilmember Goods, but he can't, and the administration or whomever or Ms. Travis, I know that you'll resolve this. A couple of questions. Number one, I heard the number 30,000. Then I heard 200,000. I don't know what the number is, and we don't have to publicly discuss it, but we have to fix this and make it right. Another thing that came up was, because the Italian Club Cemetery is in the news again, someone said that the people that were residing at the Italian Club, which is the College Hill Cemetery, correct? That those individuals were relocated to this other cemetery. Is that true?
I do not know that for a fact. I don't know. I don't know.
Because there's a question coming up of, you know, what's in the parking lot area there. So that's something that I didn't know. You know, if you look at other cemeteries, so the city is not in the cemetery business. The cemeteries that, like where I'm going to be buried, they're under, you know, corporations have bought these places, and there's perpetual care funds. Here, because this is a unique situation or semi-unique situation, we don't have a corporation overseeing this. But when we say that the city's not in the cemetery business, you know, we have the Parks and Rec Department. You know, should we acquire the cemetery, put it under that division, then we take care of it from there. We maintain a lot of other parks and green spaces. Why not a cemetery?
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. Cemeteries are considered passive parks, and so if we were to acquire this cemetery or any other cemetery, it would be housed in the Parks and Rec Division and cared for, maintained, and treated as a passive park like any other. So that's not any reason for us not to engage or take the park. We don't negotiate real estate deals in public. It's just bad business to do that. I assure you, I've given you all my word that we are working on this. I find it ironic that the new owner has spoken to some of our citizens and have yet to return our phone call about what it would take for the property. They have yet to return our phone call because they're waiting to continue to see how many community meetings and public meetings happen like this. And so I assure you that we're going to take care of it.
Madam Chairman, Jerome.
Yes, Board Member Goods.
This is Glenn Scalper. You know, I know about the cemetery business, and I know about that. I know about Mr. Robinson in in the whole situation back before Mr. Robinson passed away because he wanted to give it up. When you talk about cemeteries, there are new laws that came out because of one situation in Tampa, another place where unkept cemeteries. When we had a situation at Memorial Park many years ago, cemeteries have to be in a trust, and there's a vast amount of money that has to be put whoever owns a cemetery. And you're right, the bigger corporations do that. Some of your smaller ones don't, and that's why you see them just close down and just people walk away from them. But to own a cemetery, and whoever's owners to own one, it's going to take a lot of money for them to keep that cemetery because there are new laws in place to keep a cemetery. And I can tell you that because myself, some other funeral home directors around here, we tried to talk to Mr. Robinson about that, but the laws changed. That's why no one has ever bought that cemetery.
And which is why the nonprofits that the city tried to get to take the Memorial Cemetery refused to take on the memorial. There was a concerted effort to try to get the nonprofits to take the cemetery. And if I may, before, just for Ms. Noreen, I understand when she said my mom is there, like that resonates, right? And they cannot build on the cemetery. They cannot do anything with the cemetery. And if a blade of grass is not, it is true, they cannot build on the cemetery. It is true. It is protected that they cannot build on the cemetery. There are laws that protect that. I'm sorry? And so that is not going to happen. And we are going to, every letter of the law that it will take to enforce, that for that new property owner to maintain and protect and give the respect that is deserved to the Memorial Cemetery, we will make sure that we adhere to that. One last thing, before any of the comments that were made, before you assume any of those things are facts, I would appreciate that if you have the opportunity to speak to Morris and I one-on-one, if you have any questions about the things that were said, we'll be happy to clear those things up.
Board Member Carlson.
If you would like to speak to me, I'm more than happy to speak to you. I'll give you time.
You never made any attempt to contact them?
Now, this is not the time.
We can't do that.
That is not true.
Let's not have a,
Ma'am,
de-
this
let's not,
is
we're
not
just-
the
we're not having a
time.
debate. This is public comment, and she's responding to questions from the board.
I just wanted to add to the public, this council a few months ago passed some new rules to protect cemeteries so they can't be developed. That was what Ms. Travis was just talking about. But knowing about Zion and the other cemeteries, we put those, the 7 of us put those in place with the help of staff to protect the cemetery properties because we don't want anyone to develop on top of cemeteries again. Second, Board Member Goots talked about the lack of communication, and the only communication I had gotten was that that the city was going to take this over and there was a process to take it over. The first I learned that the city failed to get it was when I read it in the paper, probably along with the rest of you. And so I was equally disappointed. I know Ms. Travis is working in earnest to try to get this, but my question, if I could have you switch hats for a second.
Sure.
Is Memorial in the CRA, in the East Tampa CRA?
I believe it is, yes, it is.
Um,
Yeah. It is within the boundaries.
I would like to make a motion to have the CRA staff look into buying the Memorial Park Cemetery and report back to us at the next meeting on the possibility of that.
Second.
Yes, but I currently have a motion by Board Member Carlson, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. And I wanted for the comment, and God bless you, ma'am, and your remarks. And when I stepped outside, it was for a family matter. It had nothing to do with this. I assure you, when I said that I was involved in this, it wasn't on this issue. In terms of cleanups, I know this May of 2023 is going to be the 100th anniversary of the Red Cross Memorial Marker there, and I was working with the gentleman Ellsworth Williams on doing a 100-year ceremony out there and whatnot. And I'm glad to support this motion. CRA had been looking into the feasibility of taking over and maintaining and improving the cemetery, and that continued to be pushed down because of this issue. I guess this takes it a step further, which was ultimately, I think, the intent. I'm glad to support it, but my big thing is, and I just speak on behalf of myself, which is when, again, I'll defer to Ms. Travis with regards to public comments on this from people in the city, and potentially inadvertently, because obviously we all want this thing to go well, to maybe inadvertently make the process worse. My whole goal would be to make sure that this is preserved and this individual or entity, whatever that bought it, can ultimately the right thing can be done, and we all know what the right thing is, and I think that's what all 7 of us want. So that's
Board
all.
Member Maniscalco.
We have to do the right thing, and we're going to do the right thing. That's it. I mean, there's nothing else. Thank you.
Board Member Citro.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I cannot speak for all 7 of us. However, somewhere I know that all 7 of us want to make this right. And hopefully, with Ms. Travis's help and our legal department, this will be made right. But I know right now that the owner is watching this and watching this discussion, and each time we speak, the price goes up and up and up and up. We want to make this right. Let us have our discussions with Ms. Travis and the legal department individually so that we can make sure that this is made right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you very much. I've heard a lot of good things, a lot of conversation regarding objective, how to reach the goal of. However, I go back to what Mr. Good said, and it is incumbent upon that owner who owns the cemetery now to fall under the new guidelines of the system that was in place.
That's correct.
So that means that owner is also under an enormous obligation to not only those that are buried there, but to society and to himself. Then I go back to what Mr. Citro said. And if you combine those two, I think the ultimate result is going to be that it'll come, it's going to happen, and the more we talk, the worse it gets, because we have nothing to do with negotiations.
Yes.
That's up to Ms. Travis and the administration. So my advice to myself, not to the other 6, is listen, observe, and at the end, find out where we can meet the gap to solve the problem. And right now, that problem, the more we speak, the further apart it gets, because there's more conversation on the table. That's all I'm going to say.
Board Member Goods.
You know, I hear the motion on the floor, but my thing is that the CRA was not a party to this, the city was. So I have a problem of CRA dollars to handle the situation. We got other issues on CRA. It was a city issue. It should stay with Ms. Travis in the city, and CRA dollars be used in the appropriate manner, in the appropriate place, and the city deals with our whatever funds we have out of city money.
I agree with that.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, and just for the public's purpose, CRA is represented by the city council sitting as a CRA board, but we're a separate legal entity. We outsource staff to the city, so it happens that Ms. Travis is the interim head of the CRA, and she's the person in charge of real estate and economic development at the city. CRA has separate buckets of money, and we also have, even though we outsource to the city, I think we have a quicker decision-making process than the city. And the reason why I made my motion is that the city went through their process. Someone said it took 2 years. I think the CRA can move a lot faster and make decisions quicker, and there's funding. Unfortunately, there's too much funding sitting in these accounts, and we need to figure out how to support the community with it. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but this is not about the price, it's just about providing a quicker process to get it done. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, it sounds like we're going to need a roll call vote for this.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Citro? Carlson?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
Viera?
Yes.
Herzog?
Yes.
Motion passed with Citro absent vote.
Okay. If someone would indulge me and make a motion to approve the January minutes, Sue Ling would appreciate that. No, we did not have. Okay.
Yeah,
I have a
I
motion.
apologize. I understand from the clerk's office those were available, so I misspoke. I apologize.
No worries. We all make mistakes. That's human, right? Board member, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. We are going to move on to required approvals.
Mr. Drumgo is going to take you through the required approvals.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
All right, good morning, CRA Board. Once again, Elise Drumgo for the record. So we're looking at the Ybor CAC application for approval for appointment of Meredith Berwick to the historic East Ybor and Gary Neighborhood Association seat for Ybor CRA. That's before you today.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Miranda, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, the next item up for you is a reappointment of Mr. Joseph W.J. Robinson for the West Tampa Community Development Corporation to be reappointed to the West Tampa CRA.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Miranda, seconded by Board Member Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, the next item up for your approval is a resolution and grant agreement for the Wellness Hub at 5110 North 40th Street in East Tampa. You all heard this item back in August of last year, and this grant agreement just solidifies that contribution of $350,000 and outlines the parameters.
Okay, Board Member Goods.
How close are y'all, Mr. Drumgo? That's, I don't know if you guys are aware where that is. It's been a nightclub for many, many years. It caused problems in the areas of the community, so I think the neighbors over in East Tampa, and especially that backside, will be very thrilled and probably will clear a lot of other messes on the side. So how close are they, do you know?
So the owners of that property are working through their financing. They're looking at an SBA loan, and it's taken a little bit more time. They are serial entrepreneurs and own some other businesses.
They do.
So we're just trying to be patient as they move through that process. But this agreement hopefully will get them closer and provide some leverage for them to be able to get that funding approved.
And I like that, 'cause it'll be closer for some of the senior residents can get medications from that spot.
Absolutely.
Just so that the board is aware, our obligation to fund this, our portion of it, is the last funds in, basically. They need to get the balance to match it in order for our funding to move forward. And our funding is also contingent upon them halting the service of alcohol from that premise and giving up any liquor licenses relative to that site, so.
So move.
Yeah.
Second.
Which I think is one of the big parts of it, as Board Member Goods mentioned, to really make it a community space. So I have a motion by Board Member Miranda and seconded by Board Member Citro. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, the next item up for your approval, you actually heard this item back in May of last year. This is a resolution and grant agreement for the Skills Center, also in East Tampa at 5107 North 22nd Street. Again, this $500,000 is just a portion of the overall $23 million contribution and economic impact for this project, and so we're bringing this to you for your final.
Okay, I have a motion made by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Miranda. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
This is a great group, and they're doing great things out there, and I feel that this is going to be money well spent to help the youth in this area.
Okay. Motion made. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
Okay, motion passes.
All right, and then the last item up for approval is a facade grant for 2208 East 2nd Avenue. It's a Ybor bungalow, and this is a retail use in the Ybor CRA. This facade grant is a not to exceed $26,048. This grant agreement, this grant agreement is just a small portion of the overall contribution. Approximately $200,000 of private investment will go into this project as well. We have this before you today.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion made by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we're gonna flip back to the first page.
Ms. Travis, you need some water?
No, I'm good.
I know that look.
I don't appreciate being called a liar.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just put that in. I got you.
So. Got it. All right, so, pardon me, I think we're still up. So, the next item is a report on CRA funding for parks. So back in August of last year, you all asked us to bring back a plan to bring the CRA parks into ADA compliance and then also to evaluate the inclusive play elements. Well, we brought that, the overall summary totaling approximately $3,000 back to you all. And so you sent us back and said, well, how do we implement it? And we spent some time working with park staff to review the actual implementation plan. And so at the end of today's presentation, we'll be asking you to accept staff's recommendation on the implementation plan. And our Parks Director, Sharisha Hills, will provide you with the overall scope of that plan, the impact on the reduction of time for the implementation on the city side, and then also how we achieve it with minimal impact on the CRA budgets. There is a PowerPoint, so I'll ask the team to bring up a presentation for item number 3.
All right. Good morning, Sharisha Hills, Director of Parks and Recreation. Wait for this PowerPoint to come up.
There we go.
Thank you. All right, so as Deputy Administrator Drongo mentioned, in August of 2022, staff reported the projected cost to improve park accessibility within our CRAs so that we're compliant in certain parks with ADA guidelines. The board further requested a proposed implementation, so I'm going to take you through this implementation. This first slide here is if we were not to receive any funds by the CRA, if Parks and Rec alone were to utilize the money that we receive each year to address these parks in the CRA area, it would take us to 2041. So one, I want to say we are in our exterior, we are in ADA compliance by the state, but we're not always accessible. So a lot of times people think you put a piece of equipment that makes it accessible. That does not. How do you get to that piece of equipment? Where do you park? Where do you walk to get there? So look, this plan will look at all of that. It's the accessibility from the time you pull up there to the time you get to whatever your amenity you're getting into the park and or adding a piece of park equipment. This plan also here, that if Parks and Rec were to do it alone, did not include any play equipment. It was strictly addressing the accessibility of these parks. Working with Deputy Administrator Drumgo, we did come up with a plan within Parks and Rec, utilizing CRA funds. So if you see it here, this plan would cut it down, 5-year plan, I'm sorry, not 5-year, 12-year plan, but really getting us there and cutting that time down by 6 years. This plan also includes inclusive equipment. So it's not just the accessibility, it's also adding inclusive equipment for all abilities at these areas. As you can see, this, and we noted here, this does not account for inflation, but this is projected cost today, how long it would take us, and how much it would cost. Here's our breakdown here by each CRA. Accounting, taken in each year. We've accessed every single park there, looked at that and broken that down each year by the number of funds that we can put in there, and then what those parks would actually get with the funds. So this is a 5-year plan that's laid out right here, just looking 5 years at a time. Basically, our recommendation is to you is if we can invest $3.3 million into this. This takes into account for the plan, allow for compliance within 5 years, reduces our plan if Parks and Rec were to do it alone by 6 years, and again, adds 19 inclusive play equipment pieces in these parks. So for us, staff recommends the approval of the Parks project funding as it is presented to you today.
Board Member Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that, Sharisha. We really appreciate all your hard work. And I'm glad to hear that this includes playground equipment, because I heard a lot about ADA accessibility, and that's obviously pivotal, but we want to make sure that the playground equipment is there. I think that's very, very important. You know, I see some of the areas cited here in the report, East Tampa, West Tampa. West Tampa, of course, the area has the park there that was started some years ago, initially privately, now the city's helping. East Tampa is going to be getting the large recreational investment that Councilman Goods has been working on for a while with the mayor. You know, I'd love to see, it looks like we can hammer out downtown and Ybor City deficits, as I call them, relatively easier, especially Ybor City, and especially as those areas don't have or will not have in the near future an all-inclusive playground. East Tampa, from what I hear, is going to be getting one through that initiative I just talked about. West Tampa already appears to already have one. So those two areas, I think, would probably be the most needed. You know, and I do believe this is something, number one, I'm glad to see that we're doing this through the CRA. I moved it through the CRA because Councilman Carlson mentioned something that was important for Memorial Cemetery, which is when we do this, we have, it can be done in an arguably quicker way through the CRA. And I think this is something where speed is important, because this should be done. This should have been done before any of us got on council. In other words, it's the right thing to do. And it's the right thing to do because if you have somebody in your family or a loved one who has an intellectual disability or autism or a physical disability, all too often they're precluded from being in our parks. And we have a wonderful facility in West Tampa. We just had the new Tampa All Abilities Park, which you guys worked so hard on. And again, I thank you all for it yesterday, and I'll thank you all again from the bottom of my heart for that. But we got to make sure that all parts of our city have recreational activities that are available for people with intellectual disabilities, autism, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's something that's very, very important. And this is something that's unique to the CRA because it'll bring more people to these areas, right? It'll promote the areas, and it'll benefit the communities and get people out and promote more economic activity, I believe, within the community. So this is something great. Obviously, I supported 110%, and I really thank you guys for all of your hard work on this. Again, from the prior administration's the Autism Friendly Tampa to the All Abilities Park, now to this, we're, God willing, going to be making great strides in an area where people are looking to us who need help to make those strides. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Do we need to make a motion?
If I may, I move. Do we need this to come back to us at all, or? Okay, cool. I'll just set an internal one-year time clock, so to speak. But if I may, I make the motion, please.
Second.
To, I guess, move the plan recommended forward. Yes, accept.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second, but Board Member Goods.
How does this go into the master plan of the Parks and Rec Parks?
How does it what?
How does this tie in to the master plan, the Parks master plan? You got a master plan that's coming to us sometime next month or so, right? Correct. So we talking about taking CRA money. I want to know what the master plan is for the city as a whole. We talk about this accessibilities of the Parks and Rec, because as you remember it, we can do this, but remember the guidelines still say certain issues have to be taken care of by the city versus CRA funding.
I mean, I'll take a look. So the master plan as a whole, yes, we'll look at the whole park. These accessibilities are fixes that would need to happen anyways and would build into the master plan. So the breakdown of these parks, some of them may be simple as parking spaces, accessible ramps, one piece of play equipment, where the master plan will holistically look at your park and say, at this park, you need to do this, 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 and this at this entire park. These are gonna address strictly the accessibility portions, and they will fit right into the master plan. So really, we'll be knocking out some of these ahead of time instead of waiting on the master plan that is a 15 to 20-year plan that's out. So again, shortening that timeline and addressing these needs that are needed immediately.
And I'm just saying this because if you're saying we're gonna put CRA money there, people are saying, well, why are we waiting so long? So I just wanna make sure, if we're gonna be putting dollars in there, we don't need to be waiting on when the city gonna put their dollars in to fix a playground. If we gonna fix something, say, this is my money here, I want that fixed now. I don't wanna wait till the city says, well, we're gonna do that 5 years down the road, we'll use your money. No, if you're saying we're going to allocate dollars to get things fixed, and I'm gonna give you money now, I want my stuff fixed now.
And let's also remember that these fixes on the equipment are not the entire playground, so it may be adding one or two pieces.
I ain't got no problem with that.
It's
Long-
not
long
building
you
an
know,
entire,
whatever
it's not
money you
building an
put in
entire
Ms.
new
Hills-
Tampa inclusive playground.
Yeah, but
so-
what I'm saying is, if I'm giving you my money, and you're telling me this is needed, this particular play, what you outlined, I want my stuff fixed now. I don't want waiting 5 or 6 years. I want my stuff fixed now.
Go ahead. It's a plan, that's what I was about to say. It's a
Okay.
plan. And so you see every year what will be addressed, and then you'll have those parks laid out. So first year, West Tampa, which I can kind of dive into that a little bit, is a part of we're working with the CRA and the Ray Park. So that plan is already going into place. So that'll fall into there anyways, which we're already using CRA dollars, which was approved before. So you'll see that start to fold in there. Some of these things are already in the works, which are there. Some of them are larger fixes, but some of them are really just truly smaller, accessible things to get to that park and be able to enjoy that facility.
And
But I
this
hear
is
what
just
you're
a
saying.
reminder to the board that CRA funds can only be spent on CRA facilities within the CRA. So they cannot divert, the city can't divert the funds to other projects, so.
Okay, I have a motion made by Board Member Vieira and seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Yes, Board Member Vieira.
Very much. I wanted, and it's not on this at all. It's for Ms. Travis that some comments were made. I don't think I was here during that. Like I said, I was outside, but I just want to say how much and I know we all appreciate Nicole Travis, her integrity, her sincerity, her passion, her hard work. That she brings here for the CRA in the city. She's a good lady. Somebody called me on something this morning. We were actually talking about her and about you and what an amazing, you know my sentiments, so I just wanted you to let you know that I appreciate your sincerity, your passion on all issues, including Memorial Cemetery, where you come forth as a professional, a person with great sincerity. Just thank you. That's all.
Second.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and
Go ahead,
I
Board
second
Member.
that also. I appreciate your accessibility and your brilliance on issues and also honesty and integrity. And just for the public to know, she's still doing 3 or 4 jobs, and this is one of them. It's like 3 or 4 full-time jobs, so thank you for stepping up.
Indeed, they speak the truth, and I think they speak for all of us and how much we appreciate your accessibility for us and your truth. I think that is one of my favorite things about you is that you don't sugarcoat, which is what we all need. We just want to get things done. So speaking of,
all right, Madam Chair and Board, I have a presentation for you. This has been a long time coming. We've talked about it a little bit over time since we went through the recruitment of the CRA director. I'm presenting to you a restructuring and staffing and efficiency recommendations for the CRA as an agency. I'm going to walk through several steps with you. I do have a slideshow.
it's up.
All right, perfect. So with this restructuring, I don't know how to get it down here. So of all your 9 different, it's 8 districts, EVOR 1 and 2 makes it 9. You have over 8,300 acres in your city for dedicated to redevelopment work. Of the largest of them is the East Tampa CRA district, which is a district that has the greatest need. But that district is over 4,800 acres. and you'll see the different sizes of budgets that we talk about. But when we talk about needs, we look at how the CRA as a department is structured. And for as long as I can tell, the CRA as an agency has been pretty much segmented in geographical areas. You have a CRA manager for each one of the districts, but it's also made it very hard for us to collaborate. They work in silos and not really being able to take advantage of each other's strengths and experiences for the overall department. We have a total of 15 full-time employees. At one point, it was up to 21 full-time employees. I'm not sure where we've lost them along the way, but they're in 3 different offices as well. So just something to consider when you talk about CRA managers for each district, and then also in 3 different physical offices. One of the things that I've spoken to you about is the number of meetings that the CRA managers and the staff support, including the CACs. I want you to take a look at the CAC meetings plus the subcommittee meetings. When you have CAC meetings, those are publicly noticed and minutes have to be taken. So does the subcommittees. And so look at each one of the districts and the CAC meetings and subcommittee meetings. We're talking about over 287 meetings annually. If you were to multiply that by just 2 hours for a meeting, we're not talking about the time that it takes to follow up on motions. We're not talking about the time that it takes to follow up on the action items. We're talking about 861 days of staff time. So when we hear from the citizens and there's complaints of inaction or why things are taking so long, we're supporting a lot of meetings. And just for context, as a city council, in your capacity as CRA and city council meetings, when you have commendations, night meetings, you have about 84 meetings annually. So look at that in comparison to the 287 meetings that the CRA is having. It's inefficient, and it makes it very difficult for us to get things done. There's a lot of opportunity lost, or the opportunity cost when it comes to the capital. We have goals we have similar goals, but the programs are being administered differently in the different districts. The one thing that developers want, anyone that's investing into the districts, they want certainty. We can't provide certainty because we're operating programs different in each one of the districts. Programmatic efficacy, we don't know what's working and what's not working. We're not able to measure our success and change policies because they're not all the same. Again, we know that we have a common goal. We know that we want these just areas that are of disinvestment to be heavily invested on, and we want to raise that tide. But right now, we can't figure out which programs are working, which ones aren't working, because of the geographical silos, the lack of collaboration, and the not consistent policies. And then when it comes to the public trust, I think that just over time, when things are not getting done, we start to erode the public's trust because things are not moving fast enough. And we're honestly trying, but I think if we can align policies and be consistent in that shared common goal across all districts, that we'll start to restore some of the public trust in us doing the work. It was mentioned this morning that we have a lot of money in our CRA budget that has not been spent, and that's to be attributed to getting the programs out, being able to spend the money, being able to recruit investment into the districts, being able to talk to business owners that want to take advantage of some of these programs. And so having $100 million in our CRA budget, in my opinion, is not acceptable. We need to get the money out and do the work of what the state statute dictates that we should do. So I just have some general observations to set us on this new trajectory, if you will. This is not me trying to slow you down. This is not me trying to force a will. It's just observations on why things are not moving and just having a serious and hard conversation about the strategic direction from the CRA board. It's been mentioned several times to have a retreat of some kind with this board. And I'll tell you that oftentimes the motions that you make as a CRA board are not necessarily consistent with the motions that are being made at the CAC level. They often are in conflict or not at the same pace that you want programs and projects moved out. We would benefit from that consistent policy and governance, reorganizing the department so that we're using people putting people in the right places, increasing staff capacity, relocation of all staff under one roof, and the staff support of CRA meetings. So I'm going to go through each one of these recommendations. I hope that you would consider them, and if you can, make a motion to give us some direction on how we should move forward. At the end of the day, the way that we're operating right now really is not in the best interest of the agency. So recommendation number 1 is for that strategic direction. I am recommending that if you can't come up with another day, cancel one of your regular CRA meetings and use that meeting for a day retreat that's facilitated by an outside facilitator. I put 2 dates up there for us to do that board retreat. And at that retreat, I think we can discuss policy and governance, and I'll get to that on the next slide. So would you like to talk about this one or want me to go through the entire presentation?
Go through all the recommendations first before we make a decision.
Yeah, so I probably go through all the recommendations
come
and then
back?
we can go back
Okay, let's
to
do
the
that.
slide recommendation one, and
Let's do that.
that way we kind of have a more holistic idea.
Perfect. All right, so this is the recommendation for that strategic direction retreat. And then recommendation number 2, from a consistent policy governance, to put a moratorium on creating any new programs. We have a lot of programs that are in each one of the CRA districts. We need to take the time to align them to make sure that they're consistent. Some programs could be used in other CRA districts, but they're not quite the same. So we need the time, if we could just put a moratorium on creating new programs for a while until we can align those policies. Grant and program policy alignment for the CRA districts, and also CAC governance and bylaws alignment for all districts. When I showed you the slide before with the table, you'll see that the East Tampa partnership is a meeting that our staff also services that meeting in addition to subcommittees. EBOR and East Tampa are elected positions for the CAC as opposed to the others. There's not consistency in the length of time that the chairperson of the CAC is on the board, which with that lack of continuity or it breaks momentum. And so my recommendation is that we have consistent bylaws and governance for all districts. The third is reorganizing the department as a whole, looking at, instead of having them geographically segmented out as one for EBOR, one for Channelside, we separate, well, not separate, but we have different areas which is dedicated to policy and planning, community engagement, fiscal operations and asset management, also project management, and then housing development. So these are the general categories that the CRA, and it's true in all of the districts. You just have 1 or 2 people working on them and they have different levels of expertise. If we break it down this way, we could put the right people with the right expertise in the right areas to help move some of the programs along. So this is that breakdown that I'm showing you for the reorganization of the department. Having policy and planning 2 full-time positions, project management 3 positions, community engagement 4, fiscal operations and asset management. And let me just stop for a second on the asset management. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear from this board is our need to pursue strategic acquisitions of property along certain corridors or even for residential. And so this is really building us up to be able to manage the assets that as we acquire them. And then housing development, one of our greatest needs in our district, and true to your boldness, if you will, as a CRA board, making that decision to allocate 30% of housing funds for your housing affordability, being able to staff up in that position. My recommendation is to add 8 positions, not all at the same time, because we need to get the right people in the right role. I anticipate that we can add 3 in fiscal year 23, just with the budget that you've already approved. and then 5 going forward in fiscal year '24. Sorry. I had animation on my slide. Let's see. In addition to the reorganization, we're not recommending to hire these people all at once. We do believe that there needs to be capacity added. We can add capacity using a consultant that can help us with project and operational services. If I could just pause for a second to say that once we're moving forward with this change, you can't do it all at once. You can't just stop serving the CRA districts. We have to continue serving the districts, continue the programs that we already have, and we believe that we can add that capacity and do this balancing act with hiring a consultant to help us with data management, program management, and project and operational services as we staff up and train and get the right staff in the right place. This is not a long-term ask, but something in that transition period. And then ultimately, the consultant, we can have them help us with the ultimate recruitment of your CRA director. And then lastly, the last recommendation is to co-locate the CRA staff, terminate existing lease agreements, operational purchases, and to move forward with operational purchases for co-location. That means cubicle furniture. If we put them all in one staff, we might need to purchase cubicle furniture and that kind of stuff. And when we co-locate the staff into one location, we have the benefit of a culture of collaboration, being able to, it's like you say, water cooler talk, being able to, what problems are you working on? How can I help step in? Right now, we really cannot do that with having staff in 3 different locations. So this is the end of my presentation.
I saw one that had a longer organizational chart.
Yeah, there you go.
This one?
No, I saw, yeah, okay, that one, yeah, we missed that one, okay, I didn't see that one, okay.
Yeah, so this is the one where I'm showing the same office support staff that we have. We have a position for marketing, but this is breaking down that instead of being geographical location, is be broken down by policy and programs, project management, community engagement. And the community engagement piece is really like what you have now with your CRA managers, which are liaisons to the CAC. These are the people that are going out in the community and hearing what the needs are and working with our CACs. Fiscal and operations management is what I mentioned with staffing up to be able to strategically do strategic acquisitions, and then the housing development team. Is this the one you were talking about, Councilman Goods?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if we could just go back to recommendation number 1 and start there, if that works for everyone, it's a little more organized. Okay, so.
Any feedback or any comments?
I believe I saw Board Member Carlson's hand.
We're just talking about each one at a time.
Yes.
Yeah, I made a motion for this almost 4 years ago, and I think it was unanimously supported. And then I think we brought it up again a year later. I think we need to do this. It's a good idea to hold it after the new board is seated, just in case anything changes. But I think it's absolutely necessary to do this. We've got to be on the same page. And an example is that most of the CACs did not come back asking us about affordable housing, but we know, looking citywide, that it's a huge crisis and that we need to put money in, and we all agreed to do that. And so we need to think strategically, and it's a good idea to provide some parameters within what the law allows. I think sometimes way in the past, they might have like stretched it a little bit. And so we stay within solving slum and blight, housing, affordability, and disease. I think we can come up with some very focused programs that will help solve problems. Thank you.
Board Member Goods.
I think it's a great idea because I know when I went to the actual CRA conference, you learn things you don't know, and I think it's critical that board members go, or we go to that conference so you can really understand what the parameters of CRAs are about. So I'm really high in favor of this right here because I think that's really necessary.
My recommendation, looking at the calendar, would be for June 8th, because May 16th, we already have some items on the agenda.
May 11th, the May 11th?
Yeah, I'm sorry, May 11th. We already have some items on that agenda, so looks right now that June 8th is wide open.
Whatever you, it was just recommendations.
yeah.
Either way, it doesn't.
So does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion of accepting recommendation 1 for June 8th, since it's open, and the new council will be seated, so it makes the most sense.
Okay, so I have a motion from Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
And you're, just to be clear, you're okay if I get an outside facilitator to just kind of help us frame that up? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, but just experience on the Charter Review Commission and then with City Council, we need to get a facilitator who can take control and manage, and we need the rules set in advance. And if it's a content expert, we need to make sure that they facilitate and maybe layer in objective content, not try to steer the group in any way. We've seen that kind of thing in the past. Thank you.
Got it, thank you. Recommendation number 2 is to really get us in line with the consistent policy on governance. Would like to have a moratorium on creating any new programs. We have an abundance of programs that are in place now that are not being utilized the way or marketed in an effort, in a collective effort. And so if we could just pause on creating any new programs right now until after we have our retreat, realign our policies, I would appreciate that.
Board Member Maniscalco.
I think that's a good idea, and let me tell you why. We have a lot on our plate, and the CRA is doing a lot, and we have to focus on the obstacles we're trying to overcome now instead of keep piling on, because we're going to lose our focus and stretch ourselves even thinner. You know, one of the most recent things we did was allocate the $20 million in unspent dollars for housing. We have to focus on that, focus on other programs that we're already working on, catch up, and then after that retreat, when we can have this discussion with the facilitator, we can revisit new things and see where we're at. So I think that's a good idea.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I agree with this too. And as part of the retreat, we should, maybe we could have content experts for different hours. Like Morris could be a content expert on the law, if he's willing to do it, but he seems to be an expert on it. Maybe there's a content expert on programming that we could bring from FPR or whatever it's called, that can talk about other kind of innovative programs. And then I think there are other programs that we might, I think we should relook at all the existing programs. Like I made a motion a couple years ago to just limit facade grants to historic preservation. That failed, but I think we ought to look at it again, because we need to figure out where's the best use of money. And most importantly, I think we need to tie the programs to outcomes instead of output. So an output is that the facade is changed. The outcome would be that the median household income in that neighborhood went up, right? So it's not that we have direct influence over it, but we need to be tracking that. And USF offered 3 years ago, nobody in the administration took us up on it, but the USF offered to give for free their data analytics people to help us figure out what we need to do to move the needle on the numbers. And I don't know if everybody knows, but the latest data shows that, in just one data point, in 2019, the disparity in St. Pete between blacks and whites was 15,000, and in Tampa it was 21,000. Now it's 35,000. So the numbers have gotten worse. And so while during the time that we have $100 million in the bank, the disparity problem has gotten worse, and the income levels are not rising at the rates of the successful cities. And so we've got to quickly change these, but we can't be, it's like a company that says, oh, let's launch a new product. If you don't pay attention to profit or shareholder value, then it doesn't matter whether you think the product was successful or not. We need to stay focused on community outcomes to move the needle in these communities to make them more successful. And it can't be just the increase in ad valorem taxes. We've got to look at it economically, not just with real estate. Thank you.
I would also mention that when we share this with the public, like what that looks like. When we share this with CAC members, what kind of timeline are we considering?
For the moratorium, you mean?
Because I think a lot of people are frustrated that we aren't going as fast. And while this will help with the restructuring to speed things up, it's not, for a time, we are going to have to just hit a little bit of a pause on creation. So it would be great if we could give some type of expectation. I mean, again, it wouldn't necessarily be, hard and fast, but we expect to be able to take new programs up in August or September, or not that, but what I'm saying is just provide, this doesn't mean that we're stopping creating new programs, and I think the public needs to hear that.
So I would recommend maybe pausing any new programs at least until September, just because you have your retreat in June. In the meantime, we're going to try to align these, the policies and the programs that we have now. And let me just make sure that I'm clear. This is just a moratorium on creating any new programs. Existing programs, we're still gonna service them. If we have an applicant, we're still taking them in, and we're going to move those programs, those grant applications along. So I would recommend for right now, maybe in September or July, I might have a different recommendation for you, but at least for right now, I would say to just pause on creating any new programs until September, so that we can get with the policy alignment with existing programs, have the retreat in June, and see if there's any additional direction that you have given us based on the grant and program policy alignments.
What about just the beginning of the next fiscal year?
That would be a good start. October 1, we can start.
Yeah. Yes, Board Member Gooch.
I just want to make sure that the stuff that's been sitting on the shelf, to make sure it's still aligning with the needs and making sure we implement, if so.
Sure. So one of the things, we're talking about grant and program policy alignment. The other thing that we'd like to do is to make sure that, to Councilman Carlson's point, is what are the outcomes and what are the outcomes, and not necessarily just the outputs? Is it doing the work that we want it to do? And so I believe that when we do this policy assessment alignment with the grant programs, we probably are going to come to you with some recommendation to sunset some programs, or to make modifications to programs that are not necessarily hitting the target. Or, for instance, the facade improvement grant, is it doing what we intend for it to do? Has things changed? And so oftentimes a program is in place for some time, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in place the same way. Perhaps you might want to change it.
And I agree with the facade, because I think, with some.
That's just one.
Right, looking at some areas, people may have that capital who could match and do certain things, whereas other people don't. And the key is to get them capital to be able to do the program, to do what needs to be done to uplift the community or the businesses or whatever, So I think that's something we need to look at, because I know a lot of people, I don't have those matching dollars to get there, but I have a need. So how do we balance this need to help this person? Do we need to change some criteria? What do we need to do to help them with the need?
If I may, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna agree and say that I think by doing this and realigning, making sure our programs match throughout, that it's just easier to discuss, to implement. So I 100% agree.
So I've gotten a lot of feedback on moratorium on creating new programs until the beginning of the next fiscal year. Grant program policy alignment, seems that there is consensus on that. If you can just give me 2 minutes on giving me some discussion on the CAC governance and bylaws. We've brought that to you several times. I don't expect you to make a decision on that. If you could just give us a little guidance, we can bring something back to you in the retreat. This has come up numerous times. Your previous director has brought recommendations to you. Morris has brought stuff to you. I just need you to give me a little direction.
Board Member Gooch.
If we're aligning new policies and guidelines for the CRA, then those CRAs should have the same governing policies, because it runs consistent and you don't have an unbalanced scale. I think that's what we had now. You look at Ybor, you look at East Tampa, just along with those groups, the scale is unbalanced, because, sometimes you have an even meeting here with the partnership, and you got the partnership need to do this, and then the CAC. It's confusing, and people don't understand, and that's why a lot of stuff you can't get done of the infighting. So it needs to be a blanket
So you're suggesting that the same governance that dictates the other two CACs be consistent for East Tampa and Ybor, because those are the two outliers, really?
Yeah.
Is there consensus on that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll shape stuff and bring it to you along the way. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, hard and fast on that, just to give us a little direction on how we bring, and we may bring, once we start working on it, we might bring this as one of those topics that you talked about, Councilman Carlson, in the retreat. We might need to touch on that a little bit during the retreat.
And I would just also like to mention that with this goes to communication, and I know that we saw on the flow chart one focus on communication, and I think that is an area where we're hearing from a lot of community that they don't know these things are going on. So if we have some consistent governance and bylaws so that we can share things just across the CRA from our social media accounts, from posting, I think that will save a lot of time and make it more consistent.
Yes, and so you'll hear from Belix a little bit later. One of the things from her presentation, we're trying to have, one of the things I heard you guys loud and clear is that people need to know that their CRA dollars are at work. The CRA needs to be marketed as a partner on projects that, whether it's a CRA-led project or whether the CRA is supplementing with funds, that people need to know that the CRA is participating in that. So some of her presentation that you'll see this afternoon is to get that consistent message, or just a logo, and start to build our marketing strategy around that, and how we support the districts as well. So if I could get a motion.
Would you like a motion?
Yes, I'd like a motion on everything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, if I may, and to that point, Councilman Goods has talked about this, I have talked about this. If people don't visually see where their dollars are going to, they don't know about it. Ms. Travis, a big sign in front of every project that CRA dollars are being spent on. This is your CRA dollars at work. If they don't see it, they're not going to know about it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say, and this is not a comment about you, I object to anyone saying that the CRA board has not made decisions in the last few years. We've made decisions over and over and over again, very specific decisions, and if any staff member need us to make a decision, we make it with a quick vote. And so if we've taken the initiative with many, many things that didn't get done, and if staff wanted us to make a decision on something, they could have just asked us to make a vote, just like you are right now. And so there's been no lack of decisiveness on this board. We've moved really quickly, and we've done a lot of really remarkable, amazing things the last few years. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also believe in another thing. A picture is more than 1,000 words. You take the picture before and after, not only in one, but in many, and put a collage out and show it to the public when you have a meeting, because it energizes somebody else. It really does.
I'm glad you said that. So when we reach out to you to take a picture, make sure you
you.
return my
I
call.
said
No,
before,
of you
but
guys
she's done now.
as a part of
I'm only joking with it, but you know what I mean.
Well, so we need a motion for what specifically?
So I'm asking for a motion to do a moratorium on creating new programs until the beginning of the fiscal year 24, so October 1, 2023.
Okay, do we
Grant-
have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Anything else?
I don't really, I'm trying to think, do I need a motion? I don't really think I need a motion for the grant program and policy alignment. Any decisions that I need from that, I need to make for, I need a motion? I don't think.
In just a minute, yeah.
I don't think we're at the point where a specific motion needs to be made. I think the moratorium will allow us time to
To
come
do that.
forward with some policies and procedures relative to align the objectives of the CRA and the grant programs that
Good.
we have in place.
So I think just that motion is good.
Great.
What did you say?
I was just gonna say, the motion should be for the recommendation number 2. In line with all of it.
Yeah,
Is that-
yeah,
is that it?
okay. So does anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Board Member Goods to accept the recommendation for number 2, seconded by Board Member Citro. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. The next slide that I have is just recommendation number 3. This is a recommendation on generally how to structure the department. I'm open to feedback if you have any feedback on how to restructure. Instead of doing geographical location specific areas, we do it more along the line with what we need to happen as a function in the
Board
department.
Member Carlson.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea, but just like in any organization like this, we need account managers, account executives. I think that's what your community engagement people are, and maybe we should get a better title for it. Community engagement is a good thing, but maybe there's a title that carries a little bit more weight. I would want to make sure that somebody is assigned to each of them so that the chair of the CAC and others know who to contact.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing is that depending on where you all end up, there's a lot of close proximity to several of the districts, but at least if you're in downtown, then Ybor and East Tampa are far away.
Yeah.
And there's been some criticism in the last few years about the overhead in Ybor, even from the owners of the building that we're leasing. They're like, why are you guys wasting so much money? So if there was my recommendation would be to rent a smaller space for the community engagement person, just so there would be a physical presence, at least in Ybor. I don't know how anybody feels about East Tampa, but maybe that person could be there part-time or something, just to have some office hours there for people who are there. I had previously spoken to the chamber, and they're pretty squeezed, but maybe we could lease a table from them or something. There's also co-work space like Industrious and others there, but if instead of renting a huge space, if we could rent a very small space with office hours, I think that would mean a lot to those communities.
If, under recommendation number 4, we talk about the co-location. Before I make any decisions on that, I'd like to bring you some options to that, and we could certainly talk about office hours in the location. So before I do anything, I'm going to bring it back to you with some recommendations.
Board Member Goods.
I was gonna say, when I look at we had recommendation 3A, right, with your org chart, right?
Yep.
Correct?
That's correct.
Can you move to that one?
Yes, sure. So if I could just make one comment, the community engagement piece, that's like a working title for the description. We're not, the titles of the job descriptions are not, I'm not proposing changes to that right now. So to your point, they will know who to contact in this district.
So really you have recommendation for 3, 3A, then you got 3B, correct?
That's correct, sir.
So you go
3A is
3B,
adding, I'm sorry,
you go to 3B?
and then click to 3B. Sorry. I don't know why that's doing that.
All right, so you have, so go back to 3A. Is it 3A?
Yeah, that
3A, that one, okay. So really 3 and 3A really is your alignment, correct?
Correct. 3 is the realignment, 3A is I'm asking for 8 positions.
So, I mean, for me, I don't need to see a recommendation. Well, if that's the recommendation from 3 to 3A,
Yeah.
then I move the recommendation for 3 and 3A,
Okay.
because that's the org chart for it.
I would second that, but can we just add in the comment to look at? I would second that, but can we just, friendly amendment to add looking into having dedicated representatives with office time, at least in Ybor, East Tampa?
Well,
That's your 4, right? When you
Yeah,
look
that's
at
4.
That's your 4.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's a difference, if they're all co-located in downtown, for example, or at Hannah.
But that's what 4 is.
4 is the co-location, so this one is just
Right.
the,
Yeah.
the table of
This is just the org
organization.
chart.
Right.
This is just how to divide the
Okay.
staff and
All right,
organization.
I'll second.
Anybody else? Okay, then I just want to say that I think this is an excellent way. We have a lot of really great staff right now that have expertise, and
Yes.
we have siloed them, so they're not sharing that expertise with all the CRAs. And so I think this is a wonderful way. I think, again, it will take a little time and that we need to be very clear. We need to have a presentation once this passes that we can share with all the CACs so that they are reassured that they will not, that things are not going to change, but actually get better. I mean, they're going to change for the better, and that they're going to be receiving more support with more subject matter experts. So that's my only caveat.
Absolutely.
So I have a motion from Board Member Goods, seconded by Board Member Carlson. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. If we go to recommendation 3B, this is for us to supplement, while we're making some of these changes, to put out an RFP for a consultant to provide project and operational services, program management, and it won't be limited to just this, but during this transition and reorganization, there are consultant firms that specialize in CRA work, so it's not like we're going out to wouldn't use somebody that's subject matter experts, but this would help us to continue serving the districts while we're in this transitional period and getting everything aligned.
Board Member Goods.
I don't have a problem with recruitment, but I want to make sure before we hire this person is that you've got the base set, because you know what I'm saying? I don't want to just somebody come in. I want to make sure you have the base set, so they can just come in and just keep the base moving versus come in and make a bunch of changes. I want the base set.
And if you want to exclude that from this recommendation, I was just saying
No, I
that
won't
as
exclude it.
subject
No,
matter
we still
experts.
need that, but I'm just saying, I want to make sure that
Sure.
before that person is hired, we've got
Correct.
it moved, you know?
Correct. We want to make sure that the foundation is right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I don't know who the consulting firms are, but what I would like, the reason why I don't go to the FPR, whatever it's called, FRA meetings, is because I want us to leapfrog. I watch their newsletters. I'm not impressed with the programs they're doing in other places. I want us to leapfrog other cities. I mean, Tampa is an innovative city, and we have smart people, and we have incredible resources at USF, and I think we ought to, instead of, what consultants do a lot of times is they take what some place is doing and they sell that to somebody else. And instead, we should be thinking way ahead of everyone else. And I think we've got brilliant people at USF. A couple of the key people that I was working with, Mike Bloom and Moaz Limiam, they both left. But if we went to corporate relations and or research and innovation and or the business school, and I'm happy to help you do that. But if we have any money, we could outsource it to them and have them look at it, but we'd have access to their data analytics people, and they've offered to help us for free. And the most important thing is they have predictive analytics, and they've helped build billions of dollars of wealth with companies like ConnectWise in our community through their data analytics. And I think that we could leapfrog by really looking down deep into the numbers and understanding which programs have the propensity to really change the community and change the numbers, so that we will be, by data, not by claim, we will be by data one of the best cities in the world.
So I think that there's an opportunity for us to do two different ones. Go ahead.
My understanding is that these are just people who are going to keep what's going, while the consultants are simply going to be doing the jobs that are already happening while we restructure the current staff. Did I get that wrong?
No.
That is accurate. And, to Councilman Carlson's point, I think that we are looking to get innovative, and we've talked to USF about engaging in some of our redevelopment plans. And with the redevelopment plan updates, I think that we can also talk about recommendations and the analytics piece to help drive us a little bit better. But you're correct on that.
Okay.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, that's what I mean. Like we can get them involved in our strategic planning, but if we need hands and we need people to implement stuff, why not get people that are looking at the best in the world, and then by accident or coincidence, they'll help us with those ideas at the same time. And it seems like there got to be services we can do to and I can tell you, based on community feedback, I'd rather not add Bloomberg in here. I know you all have had great experiences with them, but the community wants diversity of thought. Thank you.
Anyone else? Board Member Goods.
Well, I was gonna say that, Mr. Carlson, he's been all over the world. He's seen all kind of things, and I wish I could have been all over the world, but glad you have somebody who's seen things in other places and can have that kind of thought pattern. So, I mean, I would suggest that, you know, we look at maybe adding those expert people, outside the box people. You know, USF is great, but, you know, if he's got recommendation for people in other places, you know, sometimes the outside thinkers kind of work best sometimes. So I would look at those ideas to bring those kind of people along with the process. If you don't have a problem with that.
No, not at all. I don't know that we would add them specifically to the ones to help us to keep the ship going while we're doing.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what he's asking for and how we're doing our redevelopment plan, our programs, how do we leverage just using the data for the outputs and outcomes that we really want, right? And so getting the experts to help us with that.
So that could be in what was in presentation 2.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a way for us to include that.
Oh, yeah, Board Member Carlson.
I don't know if I said this in this forum, but I've said it other places. I think that 10 years from now, Ybor City is going to be the best case study in the entire world for innovation and creativity. And not because of the buildings that are being built. The buildings will be impressive. But with all their defense contractors, their IT companies, all kinds of really creative companies, and the community that's being built, the software and the hardware, is going to be the best case study in the entire world. Everybody who touches it, and we've all touched it a little bit already, but everybody who touches it can end up being a consultant to go to other countries to talk about it. And East Tampa, that we've been looking at it differently. Most cities look at areas like that as opportunities to tear things down and gentrify and build real estate. We've been looking at it really differently about being respectful to the history and culture and helping build a sense of community. And that also will be a case study, at least throughout the country. And I think if we're really innovative and really focused on the numbers, when you want to use it as a case study, you've got to go back to the economic numbers and show how you move the needle. Because the outputs don't matter. It doesn't matter how many facades you fixed or how many roads you fix. What matters is when the economic numbers change. And I think if we stay really focused, we can do that. Thank you.
So what kind of motion would you like for this?
I'd like a motion for us to move forward with a request for proposals for consulting services.
For 3 and B, right?
Yep.
3A and 3B?
Just
Well, you
3B.
did 3A already,
You've already done
3B.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Board Member Maniscalco to move recommendation 3B. I have a second from Board Member Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion
Great.
passes.
Thank you. And then the last one is where Councilman Carlson was talking about the co-location of CRA staff. And so what I'm asking you for this is to, you know, if we were to co-locate everyone, we need to terminate existing leases. I'm not going to cut it off today, but we need to start preparing if that's the direction that you'd like to go. I'm asking for your approval for any needs that we have with co-location, whether it's cubicles, furniture, anything like that that's consistent, and just really giving us the opportunity to create a culture of collaboration with co-locating.
Move the recommendation.
Motion, I'm sorry, I have a motion, but I have from Board Member Goose and a second by Board Member Miranda, but I have some discussion. Board Member Vieira.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. The question for this, so what, for the CAC meetings, et cetera, I mean, how would this affect those, if at all?
Well, the CAC meetings right now, they happen in municipal buildings and other parks, facilities. I have some ideas I'd probably like to talk to you guys about that. If we were to co-locate the CRA staff, there's a possibility of building out a room for us to have our CAC meetings in a similar location. So this is just giving me direction that you are okay with moving in that direction. Any recommendation for additional leases, or I have to bring that back to you with a location requirement.
Sorry.
And if I may,
No,
thank
go
you.
right ahead.
Yeah, and have we, so this may change, have we spoken to the CAC members at all about this in terms of their sentiments, or? Okay.
I'm bringing it to you.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, if it's gonna change, so this would change their locations of their meetings?
Not right now. I'm not suggesting making any location to meeting changes. Where they are meeting right now is going to stay. If any change to that, it'll be at least 7-8 months before that even I can't even begin, we're not recommending that now.
Okay.
I'll bring that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Citro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Playing devil's advocate, the first word in CRA is community.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tend to agree with Councilman Carlson that even if we're going to close down some of these areas, we still need satellites so the community can go to these offices. All these boards are made up of volunteers. I'm not talking staff, I'm just talking volunteers. And if you have a centralized location, are these volunteers going to be compensated for time, travel, gas, parking, especially if it may happen to be downtown? We
Yes.
have a new building being built on Hannah Street, which has supposedly going to have a huge area meeting area, that might be convenient. But again, the community should have at least a small office front to go to within their own community to ask how things can be done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I would vote for this with the caveat that we should have at least one rep located with office hours in Ybor and maybe in East Tampa. And then a question is, would you just put them in Hannah, or, yeah?
No.
Okay, so I would just throw out
I
an
make
idea.
recommendations to you, and that is not one of them.
I would just throw out an idea then. This kind of combines two ideas, but, you know, I pushed the idea a few years ago of neighborhood commercial districts, and the planners I talked to say there could be 130 of them throughout the city, and I've driven around with folks in East Tampa, there could be 3 or 4 there. And what that's doing is providing a little bit of commercial on a corner, so that then, and maybe some density of housing that would then support the neighborhood so that people could walk to a Duckweed or some kind of grocery store, buy eggs and milk. But the other thing that I think that East Tampa is missing is a coffee shop. What I think is we need something that is like a coffee shop with the incubator space next to it. And what I've seen in Boston and some other cities is that similar organizations will buy or build a building. Like, let's say we built a coffee shop space downstairs that we could lease to monetize it, and then we have 2 or 3 stories above. There could be affordable housing on one level. There could be our offices, and if we built it in the right way, we could lease it so that we don't have any operating expenses and we make money on the leases. But more importantly, we provide space for maybe affordable housing and/or office space, and then place for entrepreneurs and community leaders to meet. Just an idea. Thank you.
Board Member Goods.
I want to make sure I'm clear. Staff is one location, so we can collaborate.
That's what I'm recommending.
Right. So I don't.
I haven't
think
said
you-
where yet.
Right. I don't think because that's what we're trying to get away from. Having a staff person at all these silos, because then you'll go a silo again. She's trying to bring all the staff to one place. Now, if you want to say you want to have that staff person who is still going to be assigned to an area, be able to go and have a couple of hours in the community or whatever, I'm okay. But I think all the staff needs to go to one location, and you can have a different section to where you, with your community engagement, that people, you can have a person or whatever, a part-time, whatever, to be able to handle those issues or come there for whatever needs. But she's saying she needs those managers in a location that be able to do their job. You can bring that community engagement still to the community, and maybe a part-time person or whatever, to be able to maybe take on a couple of areas or whatever, and then bring that information back. But yeah, but to just go leasing a bunch of places again, that's what she's trying to get out of, leasing all these different places. But Mr. Carlson, you're right, a coffee shop, something like that, we can build something, that office person, the staff person could go there. I mean, I'm in favor, because you're right, there's no place in the east side of town to go have a meeting, have a cup of coffee, or to have a meeting or such and such. But I think staff needs to be all together collaborating, and you can probably get some part-timers, do some of this other community engagement to meet what people need to meet, or go to a certain location.
Board Member Citro.
Thank you very much. Thank you for articulating my point so well, Councilman Goods. The idea is, yes, to narrow down the expenses that we're paying, but I still feel that there needs to be someone within the community, or the community who expresses interest in, say, for a facade grant, or want to give their opinion about a park, or need to be able to go there. Because remember, we're still dealing with slum and blight. There are some people that don't want to spend 3 hours on a bus to maybe go downtown, Hannah Street, or wherever the central location is.
I don't
Thank you,
recommend
Madam
any
Chair.
of those places yet.
I would, I know that you're looking for possible purchase space for co-location, so I might suggest somewhere in the Ybor/East Tampa area for that, for cost. I mean, absolutely a centralized location, but downtown is wildly expensive now. That may not be the best use of our CRA resources. So I would encourage that. I also would have no problem with even, we wouldn't even necessarily have to rent space somewhere. We could even do something like a bus. I don't know if anybody remembers the Bookmobile from way back when.
Bookmobile.
But just something like that where you can be in a different space in different times, just to have a community outreach person. But I don't think outreach needs to necessarily have office space, because office space is very expensive. Or full-time office space, rather. So, but I believe right now we have a motion on the floor from Councilmember Goods, seconded by Councilmember Miranda, for approval of recommendation number 4. Mr. Drumgo.
Well, Madam Chair, I think you were moving it along, but I really didn't want to get into the weeds on it. I think part of the challenge now, even today, is that, our staff, they're mobile, right? They have cars, they have feet, they should be walking the community and engaging with their constituents as well. So a lot of this is go sell the grant programs door to door. And engage with the constituents and the community. So I don't think we're trying to take the community out. Even if they're centrally located, those bodies can still physically get up and walk away from a desk to get out in the community and do that work. So it does not, change the intent of what you would like to do going forward.
It's a very good point.
What is
Okay, I have, anyone else? Okay, I have a motion on, I'm sorry, Board Member Carlson?
Yeah, I'll vote for it, but just, and maybe there's not the votes for an amendment, but I would just ask the staff to look at having some kind of office hours. Renting a desk from the chamber in Ybor City is not that big a deal, if they have it. But I would ask that there would be some place that people know that they could meet someone. So I would just ask you to look at that. Thank you.
I hear you guys loud and clear. I'm gonna bring recommendations back. I just needed a direction and needed to for you to have this discussion so that I know where to go. I'll bring
Okay.
it back to you. And I hear that loud and clear.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion, nay? Okay, I'm sorry, so it's a 6-1 vote. Okay, Board Member Carlson.
Was that the last recommendation?
Yes, it was.
I just want to ask kind of a crazy question that I asked 4 years ago. The CRA outsources staff from the city. It outsources services to the city, and the stated benefits of that are that we get access to legal services and purchasing services and things like that. But the question is, would it make sense for, as you restructure, to take some of the employees, especially new ones, and put them in an employee leasing situation or something like that? I'm not asking you to answer that
In a
now.
what lease?
Like an employee leasing situation. Or something. I'm not asking you to answer that today, but just to think about the efficiencies. Would people rather work for the city or the CRA? Would they like the city benefits, or would they rather have more flexible benefits? I don't know the answer to it. I'm just asking the question.
Sure.
I assume that some CRAs have completely separate staff that report directly to them. So anyway, don't answer it now. I'm just asking a question.
Okay. Well, I could bring it back. We have to bring back the service level agreement to you in March. And so I could do a little legwork and report that to you when I bring it back in March.
Board Member Goods, sorry.
I was just throwing out there.
Board Member Goods.
And I believe he's asking that question because if you look in actuality, all of the actual staff of the CRA belong to the city, and they answer to the administration. They don't answer to this board. Only the director answers to the board, and that's why I think it's been a conflict a little bit as well, because I got a boss, but yeah, I got to answer what the administration says versus no, this is a CRA body board. So I think that's why he's asking that question, which is a valid question to ask.
Yeah. I just hope that Mr. Drumgo and I have been doing a good job that we've been directing them. So,
Maybe you, Mr. Drumgo. You
Is
guys,
there, was that
up
it
front.
for this one? I'll bring that back with the service level agreement. The next item, anyway, thank you for taking the time and indulging in that conversation. I have some good direction on this, and I'll look forward to bringing these items back to you on them.
Thank you for taking leadership on that, too.
Thank you. The next item we have is, Elisa's gonna do the introduction for it, sorry. Thank you.
All right, the final item for you today is your update on marketing and communications. We have our marketing and communications coordinator, B. Parks, with us today. And I'll just say that, you know, it's not an easy job to take on or to jump into. I think that the communities, because of what you've heard about the silos, have varying understandings and objectives as to how they would like to go about seeing their particular CRAs represented. And I think that you also have some CRAs currently that are exploring marketing and communications contracts through their subcommittees. And so it has been quite the challenge to try to pull the reins in and to pull together an umbrella representation of the Tampa CRA as a whole. And so I just want you to be thinking about that as she's presenting as to whether or not you all will want to continue to see those individualized representations or logos that will be generated through some of the other CRAs. But with that, I think B has done a great job of reaching out to you all through your aides to obtain feedback about where we are. And so I'll let her take it away. And,
Thank you.
If you could, please, the presentation for item number 6. Just keep in mind, you have to tell the next slide, 'cause you can't.
It's up.
All righty. Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Thank you for having me here today. I am excited. This has been a long way coming, and I am proud that I took on the task to work and create a logo to represent Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency. Next slide, please. So about us, each member up here understands the community. They know what they bring to that community along with what that community represents. We are the Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency. We pride ourselves with working closely with residents, local businesses, community stakeholders, and the private sector to be a leader in redeveloping and sustaining all communities within our CRA boundaries. That's who we are. Each member up there has had these conversations. I've listened to the community, and this is who Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency is. Next slide, please. So this is our color palette for our logo. I did a lot of research on this. I started here in March, and we are now here in February, and now we're moving forward to having our Tampa logo. This kind of represents some colors within the city of Tampa, just looking at some logos out there with different organizations within our boundaries, and also just coming up with a palette that represents us. Next slide, please. This is our typeface. I did double check and make sure that this is ADA compliant, so once all the flyers, project signs, I hear you loud and clear, those project signs are going out, and that's why I'm happy that we're here today to move that forward. I've been working on this for a long time. So this is ADA compliant, and this will roll into, any marketing materials that come out of the CRA. Next, please. So the process, it has been a process. When I first started here in March, I took on the task to just design a couple of logos, pass that around staff. We communicated amongst each other. Staff gave great feedback about those logos. Then we continued to say, okay, let's look at other avenues. We explored those avenues at that time with an outside, logo design company that came up with a couple of those designs. Then we brought that back in-house and decided, okay, listen, let's go ahead and have these conversations with each of the board members. Thank you for the majority of you that responded to me hounding you guys, your aides, to sit down and please let's look at this logo and make sure we have this done. So after all of that, we took those designs, flushed them out again amongst you guys, came back with some great feedback, and then we're moving forward with what I'm presenting today. So that's how that process went. Next slide, please. This is our brand. This is our logo. Tampa CRA is our primary logo. Me personally, I like the colors. It represents us well. Our social media logo is stackable. I want to actually give thanks to Jeremy Rex and his team from the city side. He has been great working with me to come up with this design, along with getting the feedback from the board members and the staff to make sure we're clearly represented. So that is what we did here. Next slide, please. So the different logo uses in the community. So the project signs that are in development right now will have our Tampa CRA logo. Underneath will be strengthening communities, because that's what we do. We work with the private sector, with the public sector, with our stakeholders, our businesses, and we strengthen those communities. So I just thought that was a perfect logo to use for those signs. Again, all marketing materials come in black and white, so there go a sample of that, along with our news release and our press releases that go out. If anyone attended a couple of weeks ago in East Tampa, we had our first press release, and it was great. We got to highlight one of the programs within the East Tampa CRA, and tomorrow we get to celebrate another recipient of one of our programs in West Tampa. So we, upon conversation here, we will use this headline for that. Next slide, please. Pretty much that's our logo, my logo presentation. Any questions about the logo before I go into marketing outline?
Board Member Maniscalco.
Thank you very much for that. I very much like the font. It gives it an Art Deco look.
Yes.
So it's the history, but at the same time it's fresh and it's new and it's vibrant.
Yes.
And it pops. And it's not something that won't be eye-catching, that people just look over, they're gonna go, what's that? I've never seen that before, but at the same time, it's inviting, it's positive, it's everything that the CRA should be.
Yes.
So, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board Member Goods.
I would say it's different. I didn't understand the little B. I don't understand what that is at the bottom. Is that for 88? I don't know what that is.
Can you pull it back up, please?
The B at Tampa CRA, I don't know. That's the typesetting set mistake or
You said typeface?
what is that?
Oh,
The
that just
brand?
explains the font for the logo, so you can see it in each letter is represented, so you can see how clear it looks. And
A
how
B
it's
don't
gonna
look clear
be
to me. That's how a B is made. I don't know. It looks like a B to me. I don't know what that is. Okay,
That's
I
a
don't know.
B.
I don't know what that is, but I mean that's great. You have a big thing that says Tampa CRA, but I thought you also would have some type of logo seal that you have and would have the different CRAs under that in that seal or something. I mean I just think when you put something out there, you have two. And I think when you look at putting on a big board, yeah, you could have the Tampa CRA on it, but I was just looking for also maybe a seal as well to go with that, saying no different than here. You have the city seal, but now you have a CRA seal.
Okay.
When you put on that board. But that's just my thinking. Mr. Drungo, you jumping up? No, don't beat me up, sir.
I won't, and let me support on this, and we're still the city of Tampa, right? And the CRA is still a dependent special, district. So just keep that in mind. So we are, while promoting what the CRA represents, individually, we are also still reminding that still city of Tampa, right? So we're not getting too far away from that by creating a separate seal.
Okay, Mr. Drungo, I take you.
Board Member Citro.
Thank you very much. I like it. Whereas each individual CAC is its own body, and we are the CRA, is there going to be a separate type of logo or a logo name underneath for each individual CRA? Say this Tampa CRA, Strengths and Community, boom, is underneath of it going to be Ybor City CAC 1, Ybor City CAC 2, Drew Park CAC, is it going to go that way?
Well, and I don't want to take over her presentation, but that's part of how I led in to get some direction from you today to figure out if you want to allow those additional logos to stand alone, because as a body, as the CRA, as a representation as a Tampa CRA, your CACs continue to attempt to promote or separate themselves in that way. And so I think that if we want to have a strong brand, you know, Coca-Cola does not have separate logos for different products, right?
But they do,
Or
but
unless,
they-
well,
I don't mean to
well, for a
interrupt you.
Sprite product, right? I think that those things, they stand whole, but, again, it's up to you all to decide.
And if I may, Madam Chair, please, and thank you, before Mr. Massey chimes in. To your point, you've got Coke Classic, you got Coke Zero, it's still all under the brand. My point is that Tampa CRA, someone sees that, okay, that's the city of Tampa. But if someone sees Tampa CRA Strength of Community and then the individual CRAs have something underneath, then that person in that community is gonna go, okay, I'm part of it. Thank you, Madam
I
Chair.
do want to just real quickly interrupt. There's only one CRA, is the Tampa CRA. There's no other CRAs. We have different redevelopment areas, and so if you want to designate the redevelopment area, not the CAC, because the CAC is not a legal
Okay,
body,
development
it's just
area
an
then.
advisory
Thank
body,
you, Madam Chair.
that you could identify that separate redevelopment areas perhaps in your signage or your branding. But we only have one agency, and we have different redevelopment areas that this one agency manages.
Then I stand corrected, each area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Miranda.
No, I look at it real quickly, and what I like about it is that the colors are not offensive. They blend in with a welcoming thing. It's not like my old political signs or somebody's political signs that are red and black, and you look at it, you want attention for that moment. I'm telling you how I feel. And then when you see this, it's calming. I'm not wanting to, I don't do production, I don't do this kind of work, but it's pleasant to the eye. And I think that's what you want. You want something that is pleasant to the eye. And what it says, what it is. It says, you know, what it is and strengthening communities. And I understand that, but that's how I feel.
Okay, Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, thank you for going through this process. This is one of those things that I do for a living, so I have a hard time looking at it without thinking of the bigger processes. But one thing I would add in is that a design should be based on criteria, and especially if you show this presentation to anybody else, there needs to be a slide that talks about the attributes. So when you interviewed us, I'm sure you picked up certain attributes, like Board Member Miranda mentioned, friendly or pleasing. You might add connection to history, culture, innovation. I mean, even though it's alluding to the past, it also is kind of modern in its look and feel. It also, I think one of the criteria was that it has to have some similarity to the city, even though it doesn't use the seal, and so you use the same colors that the city uses, so that if people see them together, they can see they're in the same family. I would just recommend that I think you did that intuitively, and the design team did it intuitively, but I think it's worth mentioning those, the criteria that we're trying to, and not just for logo, but for the brief of all the other marketing stuff we're gonna do. And I think one of the things, we've had a lot of criticism of the CRA over the past 4 years, partly coming from us, partly coming from the community. And we need to show where we're going for the future. What is our strategic goal for communication? And that should be embedded in the design, but also connect to the other marketing stuff. The second thing for the public is that, why are we doing this? The CRA legally is a separate entity. It has a separate bucket of money, 53 or whatever $1 million a year. We have a responsibility sitting as a CRA board to spend that money wisely. There's been a lot of concern from different communities that money hasn't been spent or hasn't been spent as wisely in the past as they wanted. And so we've tried to really focus on spending the money wisely. And with Ms. Travis's whole recommendations, you see that we're aggressively trying to make sure that we focus on getting results for the future. And so the idea of the logo is not so we can promote ourselves, it's so that the public can see that we're spending the money. Because, for example, we're renovating Tampa Union Station. If it doesn't say CRA, nobody knows who's paying for it. And if the community drives by a facade and sees the CRA logo, they know who paid for it. That way they can feel comfortable that their money is being spent wisely, and they can see physically. Somebody mentioned pictures. Was it Councilmember Miranda, if they see the picture, they'll know the CRA is spending the money. So that's why we're doing this. And because you didn't house it, probably didn't cost very much either. The next thing is that, yes, the city has a symbol, but the city also has a logo, which is a logo type, that script, and that stands by itself. I guess sometimes it stands with the symbol, but that's the logo of the city. I really love that logo. I don't know who designed it or when, but it's beautiful. The idea here is that we have what's called a logo type. I think it's not necessary to create a symbol, not because the city has the seal, but because typically you create a symbol when you're trying to build other subunits of a company, and you need to have a symbol, like you might use the same typeface and colors with the symbol, but different names. And so the symbol helps tie it in visually to show that they're all part of the same organization. But we don't have that, and it's a whole other process to come up with the symbols, which can be complicated, and it's hard to trademark them. I think we should trademark this too, by the way.
Okay.
And then, not the name, but the look. And then you'd be surprised with who tries to steal trademarks. The next thing is that, can you go back a couple slides to typeface? Here's what I recommend. I've written a bunch of manuals on identity. Usually companies have a secondary typeface, and the secondary typeface is the one that's used in presentations like this. What I would recommend is, if this is the typeface that you use for the logo type, I would leave that aside. First of all, because you don't want people to go recreate it on their computers. You want them to use the original art that you have. But second, and ideally you would have changed the kerning or whatever to make sure that it all fits together, and so you don't want somebody to mess that up. The second thing, though, is that it'll help it to be more readable. So I would ask Jeremy or somebody to try to find a compatible secondary typeface, ADA compliant, but that would change the B situation too if we had that. And then the last thing is what I think Board Member Citro and others mentioned is we need to figure out the sub-brands. I don't think that we should have separate logos. I know East Tampa already has its logo. We shouldn't have separate logos, but we need to figure out how to identify it. So underneath, instead of the tagline, you might put Ybor City District, or
That was the idea.
it's coming up. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the
and then
idea.
and then sometimes the tagline would come underneath that, but we just need a consistent way of handling it. All right, thank you.
Just to comment really quickly on what you said, Board Member Carlson, we do have alternative fonts, and we also have that in design, our logo with each district. East Tampa has its own logo, Ybor City has its own logo, but that is what we were trying to do while we brand us uniformly.
So
Put each district underneath the Tampa CRA.
this, in a way, is a mini graphics manual. So what I would do is I'd have a next page after this that said secondary typeface. I would just call that one, instead of primary, I would call it like logo typeface or something like that.
Okay.
So that we're not asking people to use that in descriptions of things like Tampa CRA brand guidelines. That would not be in that typeface. It would be in the secondary typeface. And then click down a couple. Just after this, I would, either before or after this slide, I would show that all the different districts with that type to show how it would be used, because that way some marketing person in the future can see how we used it, and they'll see what the standard guidelines are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Goods.
I think you better get with Coach Carlson over here.
Oh, no, I got with him. I mean, I reached out. I got with him. He gave me some good ideas, and actually some words that he gave, well, conversing about when he says the background of how it was designed, every conversation that I had with the members that responded, he did give some concrete words, which I'm actually going to use for the annual report. Well, I want all of you guys, so.
Well, could you go back a few slides to the original where it shows the social? There you go. Something that we could do, I mean, it might make it too busy, but just to surround the social media logo with the individual CRAs.
Okay.
In black, same typeface, but small. I don't know,
Okay.
just sort of a frame.
Got it.
It wouldn't really be readable, more as just putting them, making sure we talk about them. But no, I think Board Member Carlson hit on many different things that are necessary, but it's beautiful. The colors are beautiful.
Thank you.
And as others have said, it evokes history, yet it's fresh and new. And so I just wanted to say thank you for you, and I know all the people who helped you, because I know you've been working on this for a long time, and just congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there
Any other
do you
questions?
need any type of motion?
Just approval? Can I please approve?
Second.
So I have a motion from Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And thank you, see you, whoever's coming out tomorrow to our press releases.
Yes,
West Tampa.
and then we actually have a motion about that. Anyone, any business? Business?
Yes, if I may, please. First of all, toward that motion, the West Tampa Community Redevelopment Area will be holding a celebration for Mr. Bardagy. I hope I'm saying that correctly. He is a local artist and a lifelong resident of Tampa. And they're going to be doing a residential exterior improvement grant recipient celebration held tomorrow, February 10th, 2023, 10 a.m. And the location is 2116 West Cass Street. It's right here in Tampa, Florida.
Yes, West Tampa. Gracias. Thank you.
De nada. Now, if I may, Madam Chair, and I will try not to take 5 minutes, but I need to make this statement. With the failing of All for Transportation to pass, and what Tallahassee is planning on doing with the funds that has been received in trying to return them to people who bought products, taxpayers who bought products, and then what is left over to go to transportation within Hillsborough County. It is time that the city of Tampa start taking steps for its own transportation within the city limits of Tampa. If you will remember, a couple months ago I made a motion, and it was seconded by Councilman Carlson, that the CRA board, the CRA staff explore the prior plans to extend Tampa streetcar to Palm Avenue using CRA funds from Ybor, Channelside, Downtown, and Tampa Heights CRA districts. Those funds will be provided to the matching funds needed to complete the funding from the state of Florida and the federal government to contact FDOT for the existing plans that can be modified to lower the amount of matching funds needed further, and to report back on March 9th. Lady and gentlemen of the board, there's already been plans made by the Downtown Partnership, and thank you, Ms. Karen Kress, for parking minimums within that areas of Tampa Street, Palm, and Florida Avenue. Affordable housing. If a person who is in the service industry living in that area has to own a car, and I know we've had a long discussion about people who are going to own cars or are not going to own cars, that work in the downtown area, I wish to rescind that motion and have CRA staff come back on March 9th after having conversations with Ms. Beth Alden of TOP, Transportation Planning Organization. TPO, excuse me, dyslexia at its finest. Mr. Vic Bidet, our Mobility Department, and Ms. LaGrange from HART, to see if we can afford CRA funds in the tune of $16 million toward premium transit urban circulator that will run in dedicated lanes between Fort Brook Garage and the Tampa Heights, using the same roads that I had asked for the extension of the streetcar, Tampa, Florida, Palm Avenue. Their urban circulator will provide seamless connectivity between Tampa Heights and the downtown core, the Channelside District and Ybor City in conjunction with the existing Tico Street line. The circulator will enable aggressive off-parking facilities, especially the housing that is being built with the parking minimums lowered in the 4 neighborhoods. Given the current streetcar ridership of over 1 million per year, which is second in the nation, the equality of the circulator will connect underdeserved communities separated by I-275. And I'm asking this board to please second my motion for the CRA staff to come back and to discuss funding that would help in this circulator and will help people that need transportation within the downtown core.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Carlson. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to start with, I think you're talking about some kind of like bus wheeled service. Because the argument against rail is that you build something hoping that people ride it and then they don't always ride it. But if you start with something that's flexible first, then you can prove the case if people are willing to ride it. Then you build up the ridership, and then you can make a case for something else later on. My only question is, why is it the same price? Is that for a year?
And I'm hoping we can reduce that. I would hope that the CRA staff could come back and say, hey, we can lower it by doing existing things. Apparently Hart does not want to get the designated areas, doesn't want to spend the funding, and that's more or less what this will be for. The designated lane going up the streets that we have. Tampa, Palm, and Florida Avenue.
And we'll certainly come back and look at it. I mean, we have to look at the existing plans. The plans are being updated now. So this may be important to incorporate in an update to the downtown plan. Typically what CRA dollars should be spent on are more capital type of items and not operating type of items. So we'll have to look at that as well, but we'll be glad to look at this.
And that was the idea that I had spoken about previously. This all has to go through the plans, the strategic action plans of these various CRAs. But to Councilman Carlson's point, yes, that's the greatest idea, is that we come up with this ridership, prove that it's being necessary, that it's being needed, and then come back and talk about extension of the streetcar.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you. I'm not an expert in transportation, but I can tell you one thing. I was here when the city had their own buses.
Tampa Transit.
Yep.
City Tampa Transit. They had on Cleveland Street was the bus depot where they take the buses at night and get their cars, the drivers would go home. And it was also the maintenance shed there and everything else. So I remember that, and I think I've said it before, when Harry Orr called me at the bottom of the steps and he told me that's the dumbest move in the world when you disband this, because once you do that, you get $1 from the feds, they're gonna tell you how to run it. And they did. And I never forget the words after that. He said, you're gonna have to pay the bus to go from here to Waimama to drop one passenger off. And they did. And then it stayed on, and what happened, and I'm not an expert on transit. Transit depends on something coming at a certain hour at a certain time on a daily basis often. The word often is the one that I look at. So when I look at often, and then another thing, and I'm gonna relate this to the restaurant business. No matter how good the food tastes, if you go to a restaurant once or twice, and it's a 300-seat restaurant, and there's only 20 or 30 people eating, you do not go back. The buses that we run in the city of Tampa are not full. They're half full. And the people that are on the outside looking at the buses say, why should I spend my money on buses? Because nobody's riding them, which is not the facts. But if they had more smaller buses, 20, 25 passengers, not the big monsters that they have, and I understand they're going natural gas and all that good stuff, and electric in the future and all that, but there's an enormous amount of capital that you have to spend on a big bus. There's much less capital on 2 or 3 buses for what you spend for one big one. And you move more traffic than you do with a big one, because the big ones are not being accepted by the public. A small bus can go areas where the big bus cannot go into. You can have better care and better service to your customers. We do not do that. And again, I've never said it hard. I can just tell you what the people tell me on the street. So it's a good idea, but if we fund something and spend that money's coming from somewhere else, like a workforce housing or anything that you want to call that's needed today. Rent subsidies can only go so far. Instead of paying the rent subsidies, get the governments together and build 100 fourplexes somewhere where there's land available throughout the area, so that people can have what? Their own house. Rent subsidy does not cure the problem. It exacerbates it to an update, and it gets worse. If you do something and get together with the governments and build some housing, then you're solving the problem. I'm for helping the public, but I cannot continue just giving the money away, not getting a return for them to have a better life in this city.
Board Member Goods.
I mean, it's a great idea to want to do something like this, but I can tell you, nobody rides the bus.
I do.
I know you do, Miss, because you're in that stage. But I can go to my community. You know, I may have rode the bus maybe twice.
You're missing out.
I may have rode it twice, man. I think I rode because a couple of ball players was going to the area. I said, well, I'll ride the bus. I see what you guys are talking about. We're not there yet. But for me, this type of money, and Mr. Miranda's right, we need to be in the housing business. I'm sorry. That kind of money, we need to be in the housing business. We need to find land, we need to build, and we control some housing versus THA, Tampa Housing Authority do a great job. We need to be in the housing business because people are depending on the city, say, what is the city doing? If we have to have somebody manage it or whatever, but to me, those kind of dollars need to be somehow working with some developers, building some housing units to put people in housing somewhere. But I would support it today just to see what it would be like, but I don't know in the future. But my focus right now, and that's all I hear, the number one topic, if you're going to these debates who are showing up, people ain't caring about it. They talk about transit, but that's like number 2 or 2.5, number 3 on the list. Right now, all they talking about is housing. 4 roofs and a roof. So I'm just saying.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, and just for the public's sake, I think what we're doing today is asking staff to come back and report on it. We're not approving anything yet. It's just a concept to come back and look at. We don't know what the price will be. I think my colleague threw out a number, but we have no idea what it's going to cost. Probably will be a lot less than that. The other thing is that for all the people who are upset about potholes, especially in South Tampa, because this is CRA money, we can't transfer it to South Tampa to do that. The other thing, though, is that we've seen ridership on the streetcar increase dramatically. I don't know the numbers like my colleagues here, but in the past we funded these other services in downtown, which I was not in favor of. If we're trying to see if like proof of concept is expanding the streetcar feasible or not, this is a much better option than spending the money to go ahead and build something that's really expensive when instead we can test it with wheeled vehicles, and it won't be the same ridership as a streetcar might be eventually, but at least we can test it. The last thing is that transportation is always, access to public transportation is necessary for transit-oriented development and density, which enables us to build affordable housing. And so they go together, and as this goes up and we make a commitment to a route, at least with wheeled vehicles, then it will give the investment community some comfort that this might stay. And if that happens, they'll build density along it, which should include affordable housing. And that will add to the tax rolls of the city to help pay for this and other things, but it also will provide more units so that we can put more units on the market, and we can try to incentivize them to put affordable housing in as well. Thank you.
Board Member Citro.
One last thing, and if we can remember, I championed a $10 million purchase of the old Army Navy store designated for affordable housing. This will run right by it. So I'm saying, what I'm saying is that put this in place, what Councilman Carlson is saying, density, come affordable housing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I'm just going to say that Board Member Carlson hit on what I was going to say is that transit and affordable housing go together, because if we're building more housing, we're going to have more cars and people are going to complain about traffic, and the only way to alleviate that will be to have some type of transportation. And it's hard to see now, but it's coming. So I have a motion by Board Member Citro, a second by Board Member Carlson, to just ask staff to come back and talk about it. So, March 9th. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
And Madam Chair.
Anything from?
This might be before many of our time here, but Burt Bacharach passed away. This has nothing to do with city business, but one of the great songwriters of the 20th century, Burt Bacharach. You'll know his songs.
Bacharach. I'm coming back for this.
Yep. Nothing. Just
Okay.
I saw that.
Now, what happened? What happened to Burt Bacharach? If I may, if I can add on to that, yes, he is probably the greatest American songwriter next to Duke Ellington. Every great song that, who was it, Dionne Warwick did was written by Burt Bacharach. He had worked and collaborated with so many great people. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I'm not going to make a motion, but I just want to alert all of you, and we can talk about this tonight if you want, but there's another push-pull out that is incredibly disparaging of city council in general. It asks some specific names about specific people, but it's really disappointing, whoever is doing it, that it's that they so easily disparage city council. And I encourage all of you to look at it. If you haven't seen it or don't see it, I'm happy to read some of them tonight. But I think we ought to try to play fair in this community and talk about issues instead of personal attacks like that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what happened to me. I don't even answer none of them.
Yep. Motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.